Good Friday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Kevin Stefanski on ESPN Cleveland this morning asked about all the changes to the offensive staff as well as what's behind them.
Every decision is difficult. And when you're talking about people and you're talking about moving on from different
I know you love Davey
coaches. I'll continue to. He's a friend of mine, will always be. All change is hard, any type of change. So certainly when you're talking about any change when it relates to the offense, the defense, special teams, when it relates to coaches, it's all hard. But it doesn't mean that you don't make change that you think is necessary, things that you feel like are in the best interest of the team. And that's ultimately what every decision has been about.
Why do you think this was necessary?
I think for me, offensively, we've done some good things, but I don't know that we've unlocked all of it. So in the effort of we have to get better, there are things that I feel like we need to do to try to get better. And it's not just one thing. It's not changing one coach or changing one type of scheme. Mm-hmm. It's just looking at everything and like we want to get better, period, end of story. How do we do that? Here are some ways that we think we can do it.
Coach, I think.
With that, let's welcome in G. Bush from 92.3 The Fans, the Barbershop, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. And G. Bush, the unlock word that he used, I think is relative, and I think it's important, and I think it's around the skill set of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, listen, he made his rounds, Coach Stefanski did, throughout this morning over on 92.3 The Fan and ESPN 850. And I think some of the things that he said showed you that he is of the mindset that this was something that they needed to do. They needed the offense was good in certain areas. I think last year they were touting that they were going to come with a new offense, and we heard the ways they were going to use Elijah Moore. And I think some of the injuries that they had at quarterback, of course, and some of the injuries up front kind of limited that. But we didn't see that same, the playbook that we thought we were. We didn't see those philosophies that they had preached to us last year. So I think Kevin Stefanski went into this offseason and after the season, and instead of saying, hey, look, I won Coach of the Year and Jim Schwartz won Assistant of the Year, and we have all these other good feelings and vibes that we were able to make the playoffs with, he realized something, and even when he realized it in the way that the Cleveland Browns played last year. They go into Houston, and you see what it looks like when you got other young quarterbacks that are out there throwing the ball all over the park. I think that there was a limitation placed on his team based on the style of play. And I talk about it all the time. The Browns have been a team, and they have been a team for the most part since the conception of the organization, where they're more of a ground and pound physical type team. But you look at the AFC and you look what people have done, the Houston Texans and the moves they've made, the Jets and the moves they've made. We talk about all those teams and not withstanding the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Bengals, and the Ravens. I think the Cleveland Browns and Coach Stefanski looked in the mirror and said, the way we play football today is not the way that we have to play in the future in order to beat some of these teams and get to where we want to go. So I think you look at Tommy Rees, you look at Deuce Staley, you look at a new offensive line coach, Tommy Rees, you look at Dorsey. All those are new names, new different thought processes, and it's going to give you a reinvigoration and a think tank of how you want to go about creating an offense that is not just something that could be to win the AFC North, but to compete with the guys, the Chiefs and other teams to get to the Super Bowl.
All right, so along those lines, this is from The Athletic, ranking all 32 rosters ahead of the draft. They go 49ers 1, Chiefs 2, Ravens 3, Bills 4, Eagles 5, Bengals 10, Texans 11, Falcons 12, Rams 13, and the Browns 14. Browns would be Super Bowl contenders if they had a reliable quarterback. Honestly, if they had even average quarterback play, I think they'd have a top 10 roster. Unfortunately, Watson has not been good in Cleveland, nor has he been healthy. Outside of that, the Browns could probably use another wide receiver, maybe some offensive line depth, but they're solid or better across the board. It's kind of interesting that the quarterback play last year wasn't great. I mean, Joe Flacco, the story was nice. He threw a lot of interceptions. good teams don't turn the ball over that much. Browns turn the ball over a lot. We're a playoff team. So if Deshaun Watson plays 15, 16, 17 games, I think the tune around how quarterback play is nationally will change greatly.
In this election year, we hear it all the time. Is the economy stupid? How are gas prices? Is inflation high? Right? We're at the time of the year. This is just like election season. This is the referendum on quarterback, right? These lists are predicated on whether or not you believe that the quarterback is someone that you think is elite or middle of the road or a guy that is somebody should be replaced. So when you look at these lists, we talk about it. It seems like when we're on here all the time, we get these lists and when you rank the Cleveland Browns as far as their roster or rank where they're going to be or if they're going to be a playoff team, the first, sentence is, if Deshaun Watson does this, will be this. If Deshaun Watson doesn't do this, they'll be this. So, this is we're used to it by now. But I believe this. I went back and sometimes you got to do this. I've gone back and watched some of these games, right? In their totality, and the thought process that Deshaun Watson was like horrible. That's just not the case. I mean, has he played up to the standard that he did in Houston? No. But were there some good things that he did? Yes. My thing is always come back to this. If you can listen, if you got a crystal ball and you're reading tarot cards, if you're Miss Cleo, the psychic, if you could tell me in 11 games from what you saw after missing the whole year that he's going to be garbage for the rest of his life, then you should be playing the lottery. Because I'm going to just tell you this. 11 games, I don't have enough information, enough throws to make that evaluation. Now, you can say whether you like him or you don't, but 11 games to me is not an evaluation period. I think, if he lasts the whole season and he plays 16, 17 games or whatever the case may be, I think a lot of people will be surprised at what production they could put up.
Yeah, I would agree. And Kevin Stefanski, again, from that ESPN Cleveland time that he was on the air there, on the feeling he's getting on Deshaun Watson.
He is locked in. Of course, he wants to get healthy. I mean, that's the obvious one, and he will. But he wants to be great. He's been great. I've seen him be great for us. I've seen just his history, whether it's high school, college, or the pros. Like, I know what he's about, but he's going to work his butt off. That's what he does, and I'm excited about it.
Tell us something we don't know about him, because he doesn't give us a lot. He meets with the media, and most of it, I mean, Kev, for 20 more weeks, we're going to hear about rehab and how's his shoulder. And is there something fans should know? Like, he's a real hard worker, a little student of the game more than people expect, or no?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, he watches more film than anybody. I mean, he texts me plays, and even in the dead period when I'm not allowed to respond, he'll send me, "Hey, check this play out," and I'll hey, cool. I can't go into it, but he is a football junkie. He loves to talk ball. He loves to watch ball. But he's what do people not know about him? Does a great job in the community. Not always doing things that maybe are getting a ton of attention, but he's out there, wants to give back to Northeast Ohio. So that's something that I'm really proud of him about that.
G. Bush, the other thing that is impressive with him is listening to him dissect plays post-game. His memory is something that I covered Jordan. Jordan used to be able to do that for a basketball game, which is even more bizarre. But Watson can tell you the safety was here, I did this, and that's just the level of understanding. That's what he's talking about. That comes from film study and understanding what he's trying to do.
Yeah, if you haven't, if you're a fan and you're into football and you want to know some things about Deshaun Watson besides what you see, just on the run-of-the-mill national media or whatever the case may be, go check out his podcast. Go check that out on YouTube. And I love the fact that they do every single podcast just about with Quincy Avery. They go and dissect a play or a couple of plays, and he gives his insight on what he saw, pre-snap, post-snap. He gives a critique on his mechanics, his footwork, what he's seeing, what are his adjustments that he wants to make, what is he trying to do to manipulate the defense, identify the defense. He does a really good job of explaining that, and you can get a high-level view of what it is to play quarterback in the NFL. I also think Coach Stefanski, I'll give him credit. You know, I went out and covered his event over at Lefty's Cheesesteaks and in Cleveland Heights, and I talked to the mayor, and he talked about how, you know, how big of a contribution that was, because that was a place in the community they had identified for years trying to get businesses to come back. And so for him to invest, you know, we talk about the Kelseys all the time. You know, he put that right down in the heart of Cleveland, in the community, and came out, people representing him. I think one thing people don't get, you know, when I was out there, I got a different perspective, because sometimes, you know, in the media, we're kind of isolated. We don't get out as much as we should. But one thing that I did see was all of the people in the community. There were so many people there that were there supporting him. They're showing love. I'm talking about from kids to, you know, older adults to everywhere in between. Browns fans came up and supported. So sometimes you get this view of, you know, when you hear something so much, you start to think that maybe or not he doesn't have the, you know what I'm saying, the ear or the heartbeat of the city. And there's a lot of people that come out there and that came and supported him. I was very pleasantly surprised about that. And I just think that once the production and once you start to get those wins, people are going to come around and start to get to feel good about this thing. And just, you know, Joe Flacco came out, and just think about this. Joe Flacco has his limitations. But if one thing about this city, if you come out and you're passionate, we supported Baker. Heck, we supported Johnny Manziel. We supported Hoyer. If we can come out here and get some wins, they'll support Deshaun Watson. It's just about the production and getting it done on the field.
All right, transition a little bit. Free agency. Grading some of the biggest deals in free agency. This from The Athletic. Browns keep Zadarius Smith. The grade there an A. Cleveland and the 11-year veteran agreed to a 2-year deal worth $23.5 million. 27 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 20 quarterback hits. Browns ranked first in the NFL in total defense, sixth in sacks with 49. They also do Browns add Jameis Winston, grade C. Winston, who spent the last 4 seasons in New Orleans 6-4 as a starter, appearing in 21 games, certainly can step in and sling it around. He'll fit in well in any locker room. Remains a roller coaster at quarterback if he's called upon to provide stability and force. Same effectiveness Joe Flacco provided last season in the playoff run. Browns may wind up disappointed. I don't agree with that. I think if Jameis Winston is called on to be the quarterback, I want to see him with Kevin Stefanski. Seems to get really good play from a number of different. He won a game with P.J. Walker. They beat the 49ers with P.J. Walker.
There it is.
Yeah.
Listen, they had DTR. We beat the Steelers with DTR. I mean, they had Phillip Walker and Flacco when we played all those quarterbacks. And let's be clear about this. Jameis Winston was a #1 overall pick in this league. Jameis Winston has thrown for 4,000, 5,000 yards in a year. He's thrown for over 30 touchdowns before. Jameis Winston is a guy who I like because he's not going to be a game manager. If you need to get it done, say, for instance, Watson is out of a game and you need a 3-week stretch where you need to count on Jameis Winston. Well, here's what I do know about him. You don't have to augment the offense. You don't have to change anything up because Jameis can't make the throws. You don't have to change anything up because you don't understand coverage. Jameis is going to be in there, and you expect him to be able to do some of the same things. Now, he's not Deshaun Watson, but in a 3-game stretch, Jameis Winston can get hot. Jameis Winston is a guy that, you know, put with the right guardrails around him, with the right athletes, with the right system. He's shown that he can put production up. So I disagree with that wholeheartedly. And I think it's clever. It's clever deflection in terms of the media outlets, in terms of the way it goes. You know, people are going to want Deshaun Watson to ask a lot of questions and to, you know, give him a lot of stuff. Jameis Winston, it's very hard for Jameis Winston to not come in and get the bulk of the questions, even if he ain't playing. Hey, and by the way, he's the perfect person to back up Deshaun Watson, because guess what? Now, when we go to the stadium, there ain't nobody going to be screaming from the top of their lungs, what? We want Winston. We want Winston. No. Andrew Barry was like, listen, I like Joe, but we're not going to do that this year. I love Joe, but we're not going to hear them chance, because Joe was going to get some chance. The chance was coming from Joe. So he did a great job and said, okay, well, here we got a guy. Everybody knows their pecking order, and everybody knows where they at. So I like the move.
Yeah, I do as well, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Don't manufacture drama. Drama finds its own way into a locker room. You don't need to go. You don't need to go looking for it.
No.
This is from the Bleacher Report. Every team's draft nightmare in one sentence. For the Browns, the Ravens and the Bengals land steals on the offensive line while the Browns watch round one from the sidelines. All right, I guess I could see that. I think the Browns roster is now, though, at the point where they just got to worry about themselves.
Man, listen, ain't no offensive tackle going to beat us. That cracks me up. These guys talk as if offensive tackle is not a risky move. Like, people think, like, okay, if I draft a big guy and I just say you can never have too many linemen, you just, hey, note to self, people out there. Big guys bust all the time. Big dudes bust just like the skill guys. Don't think you're smarter than everybody by getting a tackle. And by the way, Myles Garrett ain't scared of nobody. Like, the worst nightmares, they get a rookie tackle. Congratulations playing him against Myles Garrett. What? Why don't they check these people on this stuff? This is crazy. Like, they need offensive linemen for a reason. Either they can't find any or they didn't develop any. So, like, I'm actually excited. The only thing I don't want them is going to draft another receiver, putting them with T. Higgins and Chase. Forget that. That's the only thing I'm scared of.
I'm with you. Don't give Burrow too many more weapons. G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll turn our attention a little more to the draft. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Play Maximum Millions and $2 million Ultimate Cash from the Ohio Lottery, and you may never look at scratch-offs the same way again.
We continue talking Browns with G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Kevin Stefanski again from ESPN Cleveland, talking about competing in the AFC North.
I think it prepares you. I mean, you're better off having played in this division. And I think about Coach Tomlin, Coach Harbaugh, Coach Taylor. I think about the stability that they've had in all these places. I think about all these players that have come through these strong rosters. And again, it prepares you. You're playing 6 games against what I think is the premier division, and at the end of it, you're battle tested.
Winning the division is something we dream of because it involves having a home playoff game.
I haven't done it since '89. Not that we remember that.
And I think what happened at the end of the year last year sort of underscores it. I mean, having to go to Houston, having to deal with that matchup. How much, as you look at a season like this one, do you now value and prioritize not just getting in, but trying to get some of these big games at home?
Without a doubt. I mean, every club wants to win the division. Every club wants to host those playoff games. Me talking about it is not going to make it happen, but I can promise you it's 1A of our goals. In order to get where you're going, that's a really big first step.
G-Bush, the way you have to get there is you have to win at home during the regular season. They are finally starting to do that. That's step one to winning the division.
Yeah, we found out last year that we have a heck of a home field advantage. We found out that our crowd, in a way, I don't know who started this. I don't know. It sounds like somebody is banging on aluminum foil during the game, but keep doing that, bro. I don't know. Whoever's banging at the top of the stadium, I don't know. It just sounds like we're in some sort of, I don't know, crash test in an old Chevy Seville or something. But, man, keep banging that old metal because that really distracts people. But, look, everybody wants those playoff games, and it's not even about one. It's imperative. There's only a couple of guys that I know that go on the road and do what they want to. And that's Michael Jordan and Patrick Mahomes. So Patrick Mahomes, they proved that they don't need home field advantage. They prove they go anywhere and get it done at any place. And when you got Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, that is what it is. But for the rest of everybody else, for the rest of us, you got to have that home field advantage. And it's a huge, huge, huge key to making your hay, especially when you talk about this division. If you're gonna play, Herbert and Burrow and Allen and Mahomes and all these other dudes, right? We're not gonna, the young Texans, and you're gonna play all these quarterbacks, C.J. Stroud. You might want to have them play in your place, and you might want to have, hey, heck, let it be cold for a little bit. Just be able to neutralize some of the stuff that they're doing. And we've seen that our defense plays on another level. When the Browns play at home defensively, they are different. It just is what it is. So I think one of the most important things this season is realizing. Everybody talks about, listen, we don't want to peak too quickly, or it's a long season. No, them games in the beginning of the season count just like the ones at the end. They need to get off to a good and fast start, and if they can get home for the advantage, that's supposed to be exactly what they want to do.
All right, so draft coming up. Browns will start taking part, unless they trade into the first round a week from today. But take a look at this. This is the draft capital allocation by Andrew Berry since 2020. You see quarterback, they've taken one. Running back, 3.7. Wide receivers haven't gone in the first round. Tight ends, mostly offensive linemen and defensive linemen. You see defensive backs there as well. So O-line, D-line, defensive backs. And if you want to break that out even further, it's going to be tackles early, centers and guards in the middle to later rounds, edge rushers early, tackles in the later rounds, cornerbacks early, safeties in the mid to late rounds. You look at that, and Andrew Berry said it's probably going to be about the same when he talked to the media. They value the two lines.
Well, listen, that's the best part of the team. If you look at it, if you say, what are the strengths of the Browns? Offensive line, veteran group. You were able to get DeJuan Jones, throw him in the mix, and you have a very solid line. You talk about Teller, you talk about Pochich and Batonio. All three of those guys are very solid. DeJuan Jones looks like he's going to be stud coming up. We'll figure out what Jedrick Wills does this year, this last fifth year. You take a look at the defensive line. Maurice Hurst, you take Dalvin Tomlinson, obviously Okoronkwo, and then you got Myles Garrett, defensive player of the year. Strength of the team. And then you go back to the secondary, Ward, Newsome, Emerson. Those guys back there are another strength of the team. So it's no question that the Browns value those positions and they put the most resources towards those. And it's just no coincidence that those three are the top groups on the team. Now, we'll notice right there where you talk about in the wide receiver group, 5 receivers taken. I think this year, to me, people have been asking me, I still think this is another receiver class. I think Andrew Berry, if we talk about his Achilles heel is the fact that he's not gotten what he was wanting out of the draft in terms of the wide receivers. David Bell, is he anybody? Is he just a guy? We'll figure out. Elijah Moore, we had a lot of hope and upside for him coming from the Jets. Last year his deal, we'll figure out what's going on. Cedric Tillman, we wanted a little more from him. Didn't really see it, but he's a young receiver, big body guy. I think they'll give him another opportunity. But past your top 3, you got Amari Cooper, who is on coming up on his last year of his deal. You got Judy, and you did a good job with that. And you got David Njoku, who's a pass catcher and a really good overall tight end. So you got another opportunity to kind of add to that room. And given the fact that this wide receiver class is one of the deepest, I think the wide receiver is the position you got to go with. I think you got to go with the wide receiver. If you're there, I don't foresee them moving up in the draft at all. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't want them to move back. You're at a position right now where your roster is pretty much set. Go out and get you the best available that you can get, and a home run hitter, and roll the dice on that.
Yeah, the one thing I want to see is I want to see him take a wide receiver before round 3. Yes. He hasn't had success, but he hasn't taken one in the first 2 rounds. Now, he hasn't had a first-round pick in a couple of years. All right, before I let you go, give me a couple of realistic names that you think if the Browns come away with these guys, second, third round, it's a successful draft.
I've been screaming it for a while. I like Franklin out of Oregon. I like Xavier Legette. I like him a lot. Adonai Mitchell is another guy who's a bigger body guy from Texas. I wouldn't mind him. Lat McConkey, I like him much more. Pearsall out of Florida, I like him a lot too. There's a lot of receivers that you can get. Now, those receivers vary in skill set, vary in size, but I think all of those guys add to what the receiver room is. And also, I wouldn't mind in terms of if you can get Collison or Colson out of Michigan. He's a linebacker. I would watch out for the 3rd or 4th round from him. If you can get him, he's a guy that I think you could plug and play. Thumper, guy has some experience, played on the Michigan defense, played for Harbaugh. I like him as well. There's a kid, I can't remember his name. I think it's McCorley. I don't know. He's from a smaller school, and he's a slot guy that I saw that I think can really do something, like a really poor man's Deebo Samuel. Yeah, but I like him as well.
Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky.
Yes,
I'm with you.
There he is.
With you 100%. G. Bush, as always, great stuff, man. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Appreciate you. Have a good weekend.
You do as well. Again, check him out. G. Bush, 92.3 The Fans, the barbershop, Saturday from 8 until noon. Also Monday through Friday on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. We're just upside. Take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Lance Reisland with a film breakdown, video analysis of tight ends the Browns might be interested in next Friday when the NFL draft gets underway for the Browns. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. NFL Draft next weekend, just a little bit away. Time for another positional breakdown, video analysis, film breakdown. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Lance, going to talk some tight ends, and it's a position the Browns obviously value. They've got David Njoku, and really, I'll be honest with you, the first guy we're going to talk about, Jatavian Sanders, 6'4", 245 from Texas. He reminds me a little bit of David Njoku in college.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So I think you're going to get a really good feel on what they do at the backup tight end spot. So you have, obviously, David Njoku, who's fantastic and had a career year last year. And then you have a couple different type of styles of tight end. This Jatavian Sanders kid, he is a big slot. He's a guy who does not block very well at the point of attack as a true tight end with his hand on the ground. But he is a matchup nightmare. He runs very well. He runs a great seam route. And what he does do blocking well is he blocks well at the second level. So if the Browns, the Browns usually see a forefront or more forefronts than they see an odd front. And he doesn't have to block too many defensive tackles until he sees an odd front. So he blocks very well against linebackers. He blocks very well against, safeties. But what he would be brought into, he'd be brought in to be a receiver and a big-time receiver. And he's great run after catch. Explosive kid, really, really like his film. He does a lot of things really well. He's got great movement skills, his great body control, spatial awareness, really, really good player. I think the idea of David Njoku comparison is very, very, very real. It's the same kind of athlete.
Yeah, it was raw when he came in, but, we've seen him develop over the past couple of years. Take us through this clip, what you like here with Sanders.
The Browns run all the time, second level. And what you like here is the ability to turn, make the catch, and then he's very good run after catch. You're talking about a kid who's 250 pounds. He's got a really good stiff arm. He's really athletic. Again, he's this big slot. Then again, you have another route where you're going to see his raw speed where he pulls away from defenders. And that was an RPO where they saw the backer inside come up and the quarterback pulls and throws it to him. So you got clips where it shows his speed, his body control, his ability. Very similar scheme here with the Browns run. Everybody runs at this levels concept, but he does a lot of really good things run after catch. The Browns, regardless of what happens, they have to have more production after Njoku. So you're talking last year with Harrison Bryant and Akins, they just didn't have a lot of big play production with both of those guys. Now, obviously, Bryant's gone. I think Akins would be better if Watson can stay healthy. But they need a guy opposite, especially when they go 12 personnel, that can really get downfield and make some big plays. This is the guy I feel is the guy, worth taking in the second round. The other guys maybe not, but this is a really talented kid with a big, big upside.
The other thing is we've heard Deshaun Watson earlier this week talk about how they want to throw the ball and open things up. This is a guy that could be a threat in those seam routes from the tight end position, and that's something that Deshaun Watson did very well. Seam routes to the tight ends in his Texans days.
Well, yeah, and with the Browns offense, a little bit, compared to in the Houston day, the Browns are going to be able to still run the ball very well. And regardless of what happens, Kevin Stefanski is going to stick to his MO, and he's going to run the ball. They're going to throw it more, but what you want to do is you can get that 12 personnel, you put that defense in a bind. Does the defense go, regular personnel and then they have trouble covering, or they go nickel personnel and they have trouble stopping the run? And when you get those seams is when you go 12 personnel and they go one hi-hat safety because they need to bring a safety down in the box for the run game, and then you can get these guys in the seam. So this 12 personnel giving a big tight end. Now what Sanders would have to do is he's got to learn to block a little bit better at the point of attack, but the Browns don't do a ton of that, so he'd be okay. Really talented guy, and again, a big vertical threat in the seams for the Browns.
Next guy we're going to talk about from Penn State, Theo Johnson, 6'6", 259 pounds.
So what do you get from Theo Johnson? First of all, very position flexible. He's at the point here. He works the middle of the field at 6'6", 260 very well. Now, as compared to Sanders, he's much better inline blocker. Again, I think his number one threat right now is his ability to be in the red zone. He's a really good red zone threat. Position flexible, another really good athlete. He gives you more blocking. He's not going to give you the vertical threat speed-wise that a Sanders will, but he's going to give you more of the true 12 personnel. So if you think about 12 personnel down in the red zone, and whatever a defense does, the Browns now, if they were to draft Theo Johnson, can go with whatever the defense does. If they're going to stop the run, he's a matchup nightmare for safeties and linebackers. If they're going to stop the pass, then they can run the ball, and he's athletic enough to get up on these guys, and he's also big enough to block the true defensive lineman at 260. So not quite the vertical threat of Sanders, but really, really athletic, fantastic in the red zone. Doesn't separate especially well, but he's really good at the 50-50 balls. Really good player. Again, could be around day two, later than Sanders even, and a really good player.
Yeah, the other thing that you mentioned is the 40 time 4.57 and the 1.55 10-yard split. Those are things that the Browns look at. That would figure into that RAS, relative athletic score, which Johnson ranks high at.
Yeah, he's, he runs a lot. What he doesn't do is he's not real twitchy or sudden in a small space. So he's not like, when you think about Travis Kelce, one thing about Travis Kelce does is that Travis is very good in a short area, phone booth, right? So he's going to make you miss in a phone booth in terms of getting separation. That's not Theo Johnson's game, but what his game is vertical speed. And if he can, and he doesn't create great separation, but he's so good at fighting for the football at that size, he can box you out. He can jump very well. He's really athletic with his vertical jump and his broad jump. Again, a guy who fits the bill in terms of what the Browns want to do moving forward with this vertical pass game.
All right, the third and final tight end that we're going to talk about, Jared Wiley. Again, 6'6", 253 pounds from TCU. What do you like about him?
So you're going to see him here. He's got great body control. So this is the best of both worlds. To me, he'll be around day 3, and I think I really, really like him. So I actually have him picked in my first mock draft, and I have him picked in my final mock draft that'll come out early next week. But this is a really athletic guy, so you're going to see him in the slot again, position flexible, blocking. And then you're going to see him here. He runs the wheel, and he does a great job of adjusting to the football. Again, matchup issues. He's got great body control, spatial awareness, those receiver-type skills, got great hands. He can play multiple positions. He can play that true fullback, kind of give you that replacement a little bit for Harrison Bryant when Harrison Bryant did some of those fullback things. Again, he's kind of the best of what Theo Johnson does best, and what Sanders does best is he's not quite as good as either of them, but he's better than the weaknesses of the other two. So he catches it real well, and he blocks real well. Really like this guy. I think this guy is one of the top 3 tight ends. Most people have him going in later rounds. I think this guy would be a steal early on day 3 if he was around for the Browns, and it's a position of need. And this guy fits the bill athletically for what they want to do.
Yeah, you mentioned, the blocking skills that most of these guys need to develop. you can say the same thing of David Njoku when they brought him in. And look at what, it was Bill Callahan, but look at what they did with David Njoku. He's now one of the better blocking tight ends. So blocking is a skill that you can develop in a tight end.
Yeah, especially if you have athletic ability. So there's some things you can't coach, right? Can't coach size, can't coach speed, can't coach those things. But what you can coach, especially if they're athletic and tough, which these guys are, is the ability to block. And, you know, with the Browns offense, if you think about the pin and pull scheme, if you think about the counter scheme, if you think about the power scheme, if you think about what they do inside outside zone, they don't have to block a big defensive tackle unless they see an odd front. And when they get an odd front, he'll double team with that right and left tackle. So it's kind of a misleading thing. They need to be able to block in space. If you look at what David Njoku does really, really well, he gets to that second level and gets that and blocks those linebackers and safeties. He's still not super physical at the point of attack, but he's big enough and athletic enough, especially on the pin and pulls, and he positions his body, and he's a really, really good athlete. So yeah, you can teach some of the things that these guys don't do yet. But you can't teach their athletic ability, and all these guys got it.
The other thing is, Njoku, not to get off the draft prospects, Njoku was so young when they drafted him, people don't realize that it's not like he's 29. When they drafted him, he was 20. So he's 25, 26.
Yeah, and when you look at David Njoku, so he had 599 yards run after catch last year. The other two tight ends combined had 83 yards. So what he does really, really well is what he did well in college. He was just a raw athlete, right? So they took him, young kid with great physical tools. And again, you cannot teach, you know, I don't care how tough a player is. I don't care what a gamer he is. You have to have the physical skills. Then, being a gamer, that'll get you over the top. Njoku is an elite athlete, and what he does best is take these checkdowns and run after catch. David Njoku might be one of the better guys at any position to catching the ball short and getting vertical. And that's what the Browns need. They need to get the second two. And they need another guy with Njoku, take some of the pressure off him in different personnel sets. So David Njoku is a perfect example. Sanders is very, very, all these guys, very, very similar to Njoku, maybe not quite as good yet anyway, athletically.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Cleveland.com, as well as the pages of The Plain Dealer. Always very insightful video analysis and film breakdown. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Kevin Stefanski on ESPN Cleveland this morning. As always, the topic of who's going to call the plays was brought up.
The decision on who's calling the plays when it comes time in the fall, I don't feel the need to rush that. I think what's most important is when it comes, in this case, our offense. Like, I want to empower Ken. I want Ken and the offensive staff to make great strides in this offseason. What we're doing in the quarterback room, what Deuce is doing in the running back room, all those things are what's really, really important. We'll get to the part of the season when it's important who's calling those plays, but I just don't feel like there's enough information to make that decision.
I totally understand that, and I would prefer it that you would wait to do it rather than just to hand it over. Are there pros and cons to both of those, though? I mean,
sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, would you be more involved if you didn't call the plays on the sideline during a game?
I guess theoretically, yeah. For me, it's what's our team set up for to have success. that's a question I'll ask myself as we get closer to the season. I've called plays. My first time doing it, I believe, was at the end of 2018. I've done it. I know I can do it, but I also know there's people on our side that have done it and can do it well. I've coaches on our offense, just Coach Dorsey, Chad O'Shea's called plays in the NFL. I got Tommy Reese's called plays in college football. So we have a bunch of guys that have done that job, and I feel confident in those guys. But really, what's most important right now is I'd call it the construction of our offense, which happens every season.
With that, let's welcome in Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Brad, the one thing that doesn't go on every year is all of the new thoughts that are brought in.
Yeah, he says construction happens every year, but really not like this, right? Like this is a kind of a reconstruction, and it's interesting. He makes some comments in that interview about how people don't realize how collaborative the play calling process is, which I probably think is true. I still get the feeling, Dave, that at the end of all this, it'll be Stefanski calling plays. I just think, you hired him for his offensive mind, his play calling. I think he's very good at sequencing. He also talks in the interview about, kind of looking ahead and setting things up for later. And I just think he's has a good feel for that kind of stuff. And he's even gotten better since he's been here in Cleveland into last year. So I hope he doesn't give it up just to give it up. I hope he actually keeps the play calling duties because I think he's a very good one. And so I think the only reason he would give it up, Dave, would be if it was like, I don't have a feel for this spread or the offense that we've created as well as Dorsey does. And I think that he could call it better. But I don't think that'll be the end result personally.
Yeah, again, if he decides not to call plays, that's fine. I'm with you. Nobody's ever going to be completely happy with a guy calling plays in the NFL. Every play caller always gets second guessed, and Kevin Stefanski knows that better than anybody. But if he decides to give it up, that's fine. If he decides to keep calling plays, that's fine. Now, I know you have written an article that we always talk to you about these things you think you know about the Browns. Managing Nick Chubb's expectations, but since we were talking about Stefanski and play calling, you also have running the ball in the new offense. Let's start with that one.
Yeah, so, we talked even last time I was on a little bit about shotgun run and gun run concepts. So, first of all, Bill Callahan's gone, right? And you have Dickerson in there, and he is going to be the one coaching the offensive line. And you have Tommy Rees, who's, experienced in the run game, Nick Charlton, of course, Dorsey, and Stefanski kind of all coming together, Deuce Staley, all coming together to create this run game. So I think it'll be a little bit different. Maybe not as much wide zone, right? And especially out of the shotgun, you want to use a lot of inside zone and some gap stuff. And I think that's what they're probably trending towards. So, the transition of running from, behind the quarterback to whether it be in the pistol or probably the shotgun right next to the quarterback would be my guess in a lot of this offense. And I was just speculating here, but that's just kind of the feel I get. And we saw some of it last year when Watson was in there, is a transition for Nick Chubb. And it seemed like he was starting to really get it or kind of find his stride in that when he got hurt, unfortunately. So it will be a transition. But I do think that, and we've talked about this too, they are going to run the ball just as much as they ever have. Just because they're spreading things out doesn't mean it's going to be more passing necessarily. They really failed last year at the end of the year and missed the run game when it came to putting away games, right? They really could not salt away a game or run that 4-minute drive that puts away a team when they have a lead. They missed that badly at the end of last year, and something that they will need, I think, this season. especially with the schedule they face.
So, Nick Chubb expectations, and then, let me go. This is another thing that you've addressed, burning questions, Orange and Brown Report. Would you give Nick Chubb a contract extension? And if you did, how long would you do it for?
I think I want to see a little bit first, right? And I think they will too. And then, yeah, I would give him a contract extension. I want him to retire, Brown. Probably everybody does, right? And not in the way that Kirksey and Hollywood did with coming back for one day to put on a jersey, which was pretty cool, by the way, because it's been a long time probably since a player did that with the Browns. But back to on topic, yeah, I think that I would give him extension. I would probably give him like a 2-year extension to start, with a year and an option, right? So something like that. Start slow. Let's see how his knee holds up and things like that. But if I see enough that I think that he can be effective as a runner still, then certainly I want to keep him in orange and brown. Yeah,
agree with you wholeheartedly. And to your point, when's the last time guys wanted to retire as Browns? That's
what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, this is from Warren Sharp Football. Most draft capital used on running backs since 2018. Lions, Seahawks, Giants, Falcons, Patriots, and Commanders. You see the Steelers in at 10. Browns are 18th, and the Ravens 19th, 49ers 20th. You're trending down there with teams that are playoff teams, not spending a lot of draft capital on running back. And you know what? I would expect the Browns to spend less. I don't know about you. I think it's going to be kind of a committee type thing.
Yeah, trending towards running back by committee till Chubb comes back. And even when he first comes back, he'll be a part of that committee, and they'll probably work him in after that and see what kind of a workload he can even handle this year. As usually, we talked about this, I think, too, that these knee injuries, ACL, you're talking probably 2025 when he's really closest to himself. But hopefully they can get him back late in the season heading into the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of looking. This was an interesting thing from Warren Sharp. Ford was a 5th-round pick. Chubb was a 2nd-round pick, drafted by Dorsey, though, in 2018. They traded Tyrone Wheatley for Pierre Strong. So that's kind of how you got your room. The rest of the guys were free agents. So, will they spend draft capital on a running back this year? Probably, maybe. But I would expect it to be late. But maybe they surprise us. I don't know. That's kind of, nobody has them really pinned down, I don't think, on exactly what they're going to do this year with the draft. But you're right. It's not by coincidence that the winning teams are lower on that list.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. It seems like the Ravens are always looking for a running back, without question. All right, biggest X factors in the 2024 draft. This from PFF. They go Johnny Wilson, wide receiver from Florida State. Size outlier, 6'6", 231 pounds. Arm length really stand out, 35 3/4 inches. That's even longer than Mike Evans. Uses them to his advantage. Good athlete for someone his size. While his drop numbers are a concern, more than half of his drops 2023 came on plays where the ball was a little behind him. And made the difficult catch. The other one is Edgerrin Cooper. Checks all the boxes for teams that look for a traditional linebacker. Tested well, earning PFF run defense and coverage grades above 85 in 2023. Rushed the passer on 83 snaps, 27 pressures, including a combined 15 sacks and quarterback hits. So that's a guy that he's pretty versatile. Either of those guys make any sense for the Browns. Cooper, I don't think he's going to be around where they're going to take a linebacker just because they're going to lock up JOK long term.
Agreed. And we have talked about this, me and you, but Cooper's film is probably the most fun to watch. In this class, in my opinion. I mean, he is a special player, tremendous player. I'm surprised that he won't. Maybe he will go in the first round, but he's not projected to, right? But I think he's worth a first-round pick to somebody. I mean, he is a really, really good player. He plays linebacker, right? And he plays off-the-ball linebacker. So I don't know what they would do. Would they take him with 54? That's where they would probably have to get him if they wanted him. I think he's the best linebacker in this class, and by far. And if they wanted to pair him with JOK and try to make that work, I think they could. I just don't think that's the Browns' style. Although I do think he's a tremendous, tremendous player. And Johnny Wilson, you mentioned, I mean, you talk about this guy is huge, and as long as it gets, I mean, he is fun. He can run too, good long speed. He just needs, and his route running is where he struggles a little bit, as he can't quite separate on his route running alone. He kind of pushes off a lot and uses his physicality, which is fine. But I think he has the skills to learn it, right? Like, he's just a little high in his routes and rounds off his some of his route running. But if he, at the next level, if he works with somebody like an Amari Cooper or, their wide receivers coaches in the NFL, I think he can get a little more crisp there. But he is a very interesting prospect for sure, both of them.
Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast tonight. Step aside, take a quick time out. Ideal landing spots for edge, defensive tackle, and linebacker prospects. That's straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Play Maximum Millions and $2 million Ultimate Cash from the Ohio Lottery, and you may never look at scratch-offs the same way again.
We continue talking Browns with Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report. He's also the host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Ideal landing spots for edge, defensive tackle, and linebacker prospects in this draft. This from the Bleacher Report. Jerry and Cooper, we talked about him before the break. They say the ideal landing spot is the Cleveland Browns. 22-year-old could use a season in which he plays behind a veteran, focuses on getting bigger and stronger, which the Browns can provide. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, starting will linebacker, but is about to enter a contract year, providing a situation where Cooper can sit as a rookie and take over in a year or two. Also, the Browns have a strong defensive line that can help keep a young linebacker clean and do what he does best, run and chase the ball. Brad, Browns are going to extend Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. They are. As you described him, though, as a first-round grade, that's what happened with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and Andrew Berry went up and got him.
Yeah, that's kind of the question, right? That's the exact example I was thinking of, right? Like, does he fall in that? Do the Browns view him the way they view JOK, right? And that would be the question if they take him at 54 or not. Because the last part of that is, he's not going to, I don't think he's going to sit behind anybody personally and learn for a year. That's not really that type of position. He's not really that type of player. I think he's ready to play right away. But he does. I mean, they'll keep him clean. The front in Cleveland and the scheme is ideal for him. Like the way he shoots gaps and gets upfield and slices into the backfield and disrupts, he would be ideal for this defense. The question is, can you play him and JOK together, right? Can they be running mates, sort of? I don't know how they envision that. So that's kind of a question there, and will the Browns spend this kind of capital on a linebacker? So there's the questions again. As a player, I don't have any questions about him. I don't think he's as special as JOK. So how they view them is kind of going to determine this. If they have a first-round grade on him and they love him and he's there at 54, they could very well take him. We've seen him do it before. We have somebody to call on for that. I doubt he falls in that category, though.
All right. One of the intriguing wide receivers late in this draft is a guy from Virginia, Malik Washington. Field Yates, Mel Kiper Jr. Think he is one of the value picks in this draft. Here's what they had to say about him on the First Draft podcast.
He transfers after 4 years at Northwestern to Virginia. he is a pint-sized dynamo. But how about this? He led the FBS in catches last year at 110. One of the best receiving seasons in terms of volume in the history of ACC. Broke all kinds of University of Virginia records, Mel. And part of what impressed me about Malik Washington this past year is that Virginia wasn't good. And nobody had any answer to slow him down. Now he's pint-sized, right? Under 5'9", probably under 200 pounds. But the shiftiness, the run after catch ability, the toughness, the stuff he did in the red zone was good this past year, Mel. You don't expect too many 5'9" slot receivers to find the end zone more than 10 times, but Malik Washington did exactly that, has had a good pre-draft process as well, was down at the Shrine Bowl and really stood out there. He shined at the Shrine, as we like to say, Mel.
Brad, pint size is not how I want my wide receivers described, but 110 catches opens your eyes.
I have to admit, Dave, I am a huge fan of this player. So I don't want him 5'8" either, pint-sized, as you said. He plays bigger than that. He is so shifty and sudden and twitchy, and his routes, and he just creates separation so easily. And he is truly a weapon, I think, and he's going to fall much farther than he should because of that size. I would love the Browns to take this kid. I don't think they have anybody like him. I think he's special. I think he's a really good player. So despite the size, they even mentioned it in the video, the toughness and tenacity he plays with. He is a sleeper for sure. He was on my first sleepers article I did. He was the first guy I listed. I'm a big fan of Malik Washington.
All right, you did a mock draft for the Orange and Brown Report. I think it dropped today. So let's take a look at the first 3 Browns picks in these mock drafts that you did. So you have tight end Jatavian Sanders from Texas. Then you go with a couple of offensive linemen. Blake Fisher from Notre Dame at 85. Caden Wallace from Penn State at 156. Take us through the first 3 picks, what you like about them, why you think they fit.
Well, Sanders is a blast, right? He is a weapon immediately. Don't confuse him he's not an inline tight end, right? Like, he's not a good run blocker flat out. That's not what you're drafting. When you're drafting him, you're drafting a weapon, right? And we know that Dorsey likes to run some 12 personnel, so does Stefanski, and I think they'll still do it out of the spread. And this is ideal for him. He is just another guy that will create a ton of mismatch options. You can imagine him and Chief on the field at the same time, spread out a little bit. One of them spread out a little bit, Sanders probably. But he just he gets open. He runs good routes. He's terrific in traffic. His hands are fantastic. He's just a weapon. And you're adding you basically, instead of a wide receiver here, he basically is a wide receiver, but he plays the tight end role, and he adds another dimension to this offense that is very, very difficult to cover and defense against, and he just will create a ton of issues for defenses and opens up a ton of stuff they can do offensively with guys like Chief and him. Love him as a weapon offensively, playmaker, big time. Blake Fisher, I think, is one of the more NFL-ready tackles in the draft. The size, the strength, he understands the game. He understands angles. He will, of course, need to go through that transition. But this is a good tackle class, and I think if he is there at 85, as he was in this simulation, they would be running the card to the podium because in my opinion, he's a starting left tackle or right tackle for as long as you need him to be. And with Wills, Conklin making their exit after this year, he's your succession plan there, in my opinion, and he's a good one. Caden Wallace is a tackle who will be a guard at the NFL level. Big, strong guy. Not going to play tackle like he did in college, but he can play guard at the NFL level, and the Browns need one there, too, because Bitonio is going to hang him up one of these days. At the end of any one of these years, we don't know totally what Tretter's future is going to be. So, not Tretter, Teller's future is going to be. So, Caden Wallace at Penn State is a guard that I think with a year of coaching under his belt could be ready to step in for Bitonio if you needed one. There are guys on the roster that provide good depth right now, but none of them are of the athleticism that this kid is and have the ceiling that he has. So you're kind of drafting, in my opinion here, your succession plan. And I think that's probably one of the more critical things they do in this draft is prepare for the transition at offensive line.
All right, we talked about this last night on the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. So when you look at this draft, what do the Browns need to come away with this draft in hand, if you will, for it to be a success?
Yeah, I kind of have just said it. I'll say it again more, but like the transition to 2025, they've sunk so much money, Dave, in this offensive line year after year after year. Conklin ended up not being the best contract that Barry signed with his injury troubles. Wills, we don't know what's going to happen there, but there's kind of like a two-phase thing. Like, if when Wills is done after the 2024 season, and say he plays much better this year, and you do want to negotiate with him, at least you have to be prepared to negotiate with him and have a backup plan, or else the leverage that he gained in that situation is tough, right? Like, how are you going to negotiate from a point of not having anybody on your roster that you think can fill his position? So in doing that, you add depth and put yourself in a position to negotiate a extension. I think they'll probably end up letting him walk. And I think that if you could get a guy like a Blake Fisher or a Kingsley Suamataia or somebody like that with their at 54-85, that is your future tackle to pair with DeJuan Jones. Now, instead of sinking $30 million into your two tackles, Dave, you have two guys on rookie contracts, and what that does for the roster build is just incredible. So
it all makes sense when you lay it out like that, is in terms of the financials for it. Brad Ward, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Brad.
You are the best, Dave. Appreciate you, brother.
Brad Ward, make sure you check him out. You can read him in pages of the Orange and Brown Report. He is also the host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Make sure you check that out as well. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.